Good evening, black people and all allies fighting for black liberation, black prosperity, and black joy. I'm Charles Blow, and welcome to Prime. President Biden has embarked on his first overseas tour to visit Air Force personnel and meet with other world leaders, including having his first face-to-face meeting with Putin. While Biden is overseas assuring the world that America is back, American democracy is under threat. Legislation he and the Democrats are pushing is falling apart. Democrats and Republicans have moved farther apart on Biden's infrastructure plan. Biden still hasn't spoken to Senator Joe Manchin regarding his opposition to the For the People Act. Mitch McConnell has doubled down on voter suppression efforts, now saying that even the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act is, quote, unnecessary. Also, Senator Tim Scott has pressed Democrats to further water down the George Floyd Policing Act by making police departments liable for police misconduct rather than individual officers. In the midst of all this, Democrats are growing impatient with being stymied by Republicans. I hope Joe Biden is enjoying his time abroad because he has left a mess back home and he will be waiting for him when he returns. Joining me to discuss Biden's precarious situation is former Alabama Senator Doug Jones. Welcome, Senator Jones. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Charles. Great to be with you.
So what do you think of the situation that Biden and the Democrats now find them in? Much of his agenda is now hung up in the Senate. It looks like that most of it won't pass as written, and the things that do pass will likely be watered down. What is the state of play as you see it?
Well, Charles, look, I think you're right. I think that most things that he has as written will not pass. I'm not sure that I would use the term watered down, though. I really think that what the president is trying to do is he's spending a lot of effort trying to find common ground. That's what he ran on. It's what a lot of people, independents and others, voted for him on, is to find common ground to get something done. I think he's been working at that. And remember, we're only 4.5 months into this administration. This is not a very long time. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't move and we should move quickly. I think we're coming at a crossroads in some very important issues. We're coming at a crossroads on voting rights. We're coming at a crossroads on the infrastructure bill. And at some point, as Yogi Berra said, when you get to a fork in the road, you got to take it. And I think that the administration is prepared to do that and work toward trying to find something that they can get passed and signed into law. But it's legislation in a closely divided Congress, the way we got, is not easy. And we've got to make sure that we do it the right way.
So what does that right way look like? What does common ground look like? Mitch McConnell has said forthrightly that he's committed to opposing the Biden agenda. And the things that he has said recently keep moving further and further away from something that would look like a compromise towards something, George Floyd bill, voting rights bill, something that looks like doing almost nothing. So what does common ground look like for Democrats?
It's a great question. And I think, number one, you have to go around Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is a partisan. That's all he cares about is his partisan politics and trying to do what he believes is in the best interest of the Republican Party, not the country. He's made that very clear. He made it clear in the Obama administration. He is making it clear now. But there are other people in the Senate, and I serve with them, who have a higher purpose, that are looking for trying to figure out ways. Infrastructure, let's just talk about that, is a very bipartisan issue, Charles. But how you get there is going to be something different. So I think what you're seeing with the administration right now, they have broken off talks dealing with the caucus as a whole, but yet they're still talking to Republicans across the aisle to try to see what they can come up with. I think we're going to have an infrastructure bill. It may ultimately end up with a budget reconciliation procedure, but you're going to get some Republican votes for it. It's not going to be completely a partisan issue. You'll get some Republican votes. The other thing on voting rights is a little bit more tricky because right now, H.R. 1 is a non-starter for Republicans. And what I'm concerned about is that we've got the equivalent of California wildfires going on across these states dealing with voter suppression. And we are not focused on dealing with the voter suppression issues. and things about establishing uniform standards that I believe we could pass if we focus narrowly on that and deal with the other issues later.
But see, isn't that the thing, though? I mean, I think you're absolutely right that the voter suppression is the entire ballgame. It doesn't matter if you get an infrastructure bill passed. If the people cannot have a say in how power is constructed in the country, if we allow Republicans to basically whittle down the electorate to the one that they feel is more supportive of their cause, that's no longer democracy as we now understand it. What is the Democrats' recourse here?
The recourse, Charles, is to simply look at the challenges that we're facing now, the crisis that we're facing in democracy right now. And that is the voter laws that are being passed in Georgia, the ones that are looking at in Texas and so many other states. How can we combat those? Remember, there's a lot of people in this country, I think erroneously believe that there's a fraudulent problem, that we got an election steal, that we got fraud in the election. Well, the way to handle that is to establish uniform voter laws. Establish some minimum standards for absentee ballots, for mail-in voting, for early voting. Establish those things that will allow people to have uniform standards across the country and not this 50-state hodgepodge that we got. You help dismiss the voter fraud issues and you protect the ballot box. I think right now, the crisis that America is facing is an attack on democracy with regard to the voting rights, the specific voting rights. Sometimes Democrats want to go beyond that, and we're looking at ethics issues. We're looking at other issues that are very important. I would absolutely be a co-sponsor of H.R. 1 if I was in the Senate today. But I also see that we got wildfires going on right now. We got to put those wildfires out. And to put those wildfires out, you have to narrowly focus on things that will make sure that minorities have access to vote, make sure rural voters have access to vote, make sure everyone has the equal access to vote with these uniform standards. I think if Democrats get that, if you would have a bill that would focus on those issues that are so important, because without those issues, Charles, everything else falls by the wayside. If we could get those passed,
but what we see coming out of the Senate again with Mitch McConnell, and I know you said we shouldn't focus on Mitch McConnell, we should try to go around him, but he is the minority leader in the Senate, and he's basically saying that even the John Lewis bill, which is a smaller, more focused bill, it just restores what was already there, plus a little bit. Even that, he doesn't see as necessary.
No,
we have Joe Manchin, who does not like H.R. 1 or S1, as it is in the Senate, and is completely opposed to getting rid of the filibuster. So I just don't know where the off ramp is here.
Now, it's a really good point, but let's pull back a little bit and think about this. The John Lewis Voting Rights Act deals with Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act and some other things that would be very helpful. Those are issues that Republicans are going to have a problem with. I get that. The Voting Rights Act, the last time it was re-upped and Congress passed unanimously, that was then, this is now. We're in a very different world today than we were. But H.R. 1 has some incredibly good portions in there that deal with uniform standards. That's what we've got to deal with, uniform standards, making sure every state, 50 states, have certain standards for early voting, mail-in voting. Alabama doesn't have early voting unless it's by absentee. We need to have those uniform standards, make these states do that. So I think a bill can be tailored. It's not out there right now, and I wish it was, that we had something to address the specific issues, not the extraneous stuff that we all agree on dark money and things that you and I would absolutely agree is important. But let's address how we can deal with the issues going on in Georgia and in Texas and others and establish those uniform standards. Maybe you get that. But if you don't get that, I think you get enough Democrats at that point to say, look, if Republicans won't even do this, Democrats in Congress have to be the backstop of what's going on. The Congress of the United States has to be the backstop of what's going on. I think personally, I think Manchin and others will come around if they work with them and they still get that blowback. And it's like I said earlier, we're coming to the fork in the road on that. And if the Republicans won't help and do the things to protect the ballot box, then I think you have to do something. And Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema and others have to look at what we can do without the filibuster to get voting rights and to protect the ballot box in this country. But it's got to be on a narrow focus. It can't be the overall arching bill that we've got now that is a non-starter for so many people in this country.
Senator Jones, thank you very much. We will see if the Senate comes up with a narrow bill and if that can make its way through. Thank you so much for joining me, sir.
Thank you, Charles. Great to be with you.